photojournalism is a compound word. It's made of photo and journalism. Hence, we studied journalism first. Because journalism, I see as the thinking process of a photo, of taking a photo. That's how I see it. As a thinking, I see the journalism side of photojournalism as a thinking process of making a photo. And I see the snapping side as a science, capturing side as a science. Now, I went through the articles and I also saw that I did tell you this. There are two major types of news. There's a soft news and there's a hard news. Now, one of the greatest things that we are preparing you to go and cover, should you make the cut to join multimedia, is the elections. The elections will fall under soft events. Soft events simply means things that are planned events. Are you all with me? Yes. Speech and prize giving day is a planned event. This workshop is a planned event. Any news writing and news photographing of this place will be a planned event. Then there's a hard news. Hard news is unexpected events. Unexpected events. What happened? You're going, I asked you to get something, you're crossing the road, boom, a car knocks the other. Boom, there's an explosion. Hey, some people have got guns out. Those are hard news, unexpected. However, within a soft event, you can get hard news. How is that? So there was a speech and prize giving day, parents were happy, prizes were being awarded, and an later lost control and drove into the gathering. That's hard news within a soft event. So hard news is the unexpected. You are going to cover an event that has been planned for at least the past 2 years. With elections across the world, there's always this 1,000,001 hard events. Even that is quote unquote hard events because we do expect emotions during elections. You're at a police station, all of a sudden, somebody comes to the baby, waiting the queue, the baby goes and pulls another person. I said, it's a big, not knowing that's an NDC person, and then the MPP person, and then the MPP said, why did you send your son to come and do that? Then boom, there's a fight. What has happened? Hard events. That's a soft event. And all this is your ability to convey. Don't go and take photo of the child sitting somewhere and then it's in your album. When Mr. Shra asks you, Mauto, so this photo, I see some child in the photo. What's the child? So it's like, hey, Mr. Njado, you don't know him. You see the fight that happened where? It is this boy. That would be the most silly photo. And if I was Mr. Shra, I will ask you to stand outside and finish your sentence. Then when you finish, continue to the direction of your move. You didn't capture it, then you didn't capture it. The worst you can do is, since you were not there, maybe you captured him and the father. Or the parents came there. But you don't go and take the child looking pretty somewhere and say, it was this child who caused the mayhem. Please. Okay. So that's under journalism. Mr. Technician. Okay, so now let's get back to the principles of using the camera, for that matter, picture making. Yesterday we asked you to shoot on what? Auto, because we are not yet delved into some certain technologies and what they represent. The most used technology and the basis of photography is the word exposure. I'll read for you, you have the notes. I'll read, then I'll explain to you. It says exposure is the amount of light that strikes the film through cheap. Why cheap? Because we are now in a digital age. So the cameras in front of you, back in the day, would have had films in there, but today they have what in there? Thank you. It's measured, and this is measured in what we call stops, and it's also known as as exposure value, which we will call henceforth as what? EV. As what? EV. Okay. A difference of a stop is a doubling or a halving. Okay? So the stops, let's say we can say, oh, one stop. So instead of 2.5, go to the next stop. You roll your camera to the next digit of it. So let's say we're shooting 1/4. We'll tell you, okay, go to 2/4. So the next stage, that's the difference between them. Then we also said a stop is used to measure the difference in the exposure value of the aperture. Aperture is the opening. Or I'll leave it to get there and then I'll explain to you. So, but let me just say now, aperture is how wide you open your camera for exposure to happen. You know, for you to be exposed to something, you have to be open to the thing, right? Right? Yes. So, aperture exposure can only be attained when the aperture is opened. The shutter speed is the speed by which you're pressing your knob. That knob there you see is the shutter knob. The shuttering is inside. Okay? So you are pressing the knob to engage the camera to work. Do you get me? Okay. And the film speed. You see, we keep using film because we still use film, but we're in the digital stage. So, but mostly we don't use films these days. That's why they say end film. Fast. When we say fast in photography, we mean how quickly the camera operates. It's not about you. We're talking about how quickly the camera operates. So the exposure is the amount of light that is led or allowed into the process of capturing an image. Do you understand? It's just as the word says, expose. So understand it as the word is expose, exposure. When you hear the word, think of the verb, expose. Expose is what? It's a verb. It means open up. So how much is something is opened up to? So in the field of photography, how much light is allowed into the camera? That's the exposure. And this would tell how bright or how dark or how apt the lighting of your image is. Did you get that? Naomi, tell me what I said.
You said it will determine how
What will determine?
the exposure will determine how bright and sharp the picture is.
So what is exposure in itself?
It is the amount of light that you allow into the picture.
Perfect. Anybody else who needs further explanation? These are technologies you need to learn, and these are the principles to follow. Because you are going to learn how to calculate exposure. If you use this exposure, if it's not a special effect you are expecting, but it's just a picture, the everyday picture you are attaining, you are aiming to attain. That means if you use this exposure, it goes, that is how wide the aperture, this must be the aperture, or this must be the f-stop. Those we will see down. Now we go to speed, film speed. Film speed is measured by the sensitivity of the film or the sensor. We say film and then we say sensor here. Remember, a typical example is what you did. The speed, you tempered with the speed of your camera. The cameras you have deal with the sensor. So by the time the sensor of your camera captured your mother being excited, you had moved it. That's how come your mother's hands were running. That's a sensitivity. That is the speed. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's how fast things are grabbed. That's the speed. If you temper with it, everything goes slow. Do you understand? Or shall I read it for you again? It says film film speed is a measure of sensitivity of film or sensor in a camera So you are using a sensor-based camera or unit. It is measured in value using international organizations of standard. So hence we call it the ISO numbers. It used to be measured with some American association, but now where we say what ASA numbers, but now the most widely used is you say ISO. So ISO simply means what? The number is of standards, then you say number. Okay. So ISO numbers are used in both film and digital. So ISO is still constant. Whether it's film or digital, you still have your ISO. ISO numbers come in a wide range, but the standard numbers used are, I listen, 50, 100, 200, 400, 800. What do you notice here? What do you notice here?
The numbers multiplied by
Very good. They double as they go. Okay. Now ISO numbers are linear in their relationship. So yes, do you understand the linear? So that's why I asked you, what do you notice here? They follow. From 50, 100, from 100, 200. The higher the ISO number, the more sensitive the camera sensor, the film sensor, and also the more noise or grain. Do you know what noise is? Let me this. Look at this picture very well. Have you seen the first picture? Oh. This is low ISO. So let's say they shot this at 50, right? They shot this at 50. So this is a low ISO. Now here, because you increase ISO to be more sensitive, in other words, also allow more light. Okay? Now, mostly this happens when the place is dark. Then you are increasing your ISO. But the more you increase, the more it tempers with the picture sharpness. Noise is when you see those dots. Can you see a taller man's face? It's like some places are green. You see that the two men's faces are not all smooth.
yeah.
It means that there was not enough lighting there, so the ISO, which is the sensitivity, was opened up to collect more. So when it's opened up to collect more, it's indeed collecting more, which is also particles. Do you understand? It's opened up to collect more, so it's opening up to collect even particles, and so it creates noise. Your image is no more smooth. You see, when you compare, look at, you can see some greenness or something compared to the woman's photo. Do you see the woman's skin is not green? It's not dark, right? So that's the ISO. So you have to, as much as possible, if you can afford, you don't have to use that high an ISO. We mostly use it when you don't have a strong source of light, right? But you still need to capture the image anyway. Like I said to you, at a critical point of documentation, a bad image is better than no image produced, especially in news. At a critical point, a bad image or a poor image is better than no image. Do you understand? So that is why we sent you out yesterday to see your news readiness. That's why we sent you out to go and shoot automatic. We are not expecting anything dramatic. We want to see your sense of composition, your sense of news. What do you determine relevant? Your sense of judgment of what is news. And frankly, it wasn't too good. Because all of you came back practicing what is called a tone. You all came back. I saw. No, the news is not about you. Do you understand? Now we come to shutter speed. Shutter speed controls the amount of time the shutter or curtain. When you press, this is how the shutter works. I like to describe the shutter like an eyelid. So the faster you place your shutter, this is how the camera will operate. All of you look at me. It blinks quickly. There's a curtain. So you have given a command by increasing or decreasing your shutter speed. You are telling the camera how fast or how low to go. If how fast, then you may have to increase the amount of light. Because have you noticed that I'm doing this? I need to have more light to see. Because if the light is low and I'm doing this, I can't see. I will only be catching darkness. The shutter speed has to do with how fast, how quick, or how slow you want your curtain window to open and capture images. This is the shutter speed is measured in fractions of a second. Depending on the camera, it may show the shutter speed without what's that? Numerator. Is that numerator, yeah. Example is some cameras will just write that you are shooting shutter speed of 250. Others will show you what you're doing by saying 1/250. Others want to stick to the old-fashioned way of doing this to let you know by definition shutter is measured in fractions. So they will write it there 1/250, 1/1000, 1250. It will write, if you will see it there 1/. But some they just write 1000, 2000, 250. But some still stick to the old way of it. So shutter speed. The common shutter speeds are 1/2, 1/4, 1/15, 60, 1/60, 25, 1/250, over 500, over 1000. Now, the lesser the number, the faster it is. So take it this way, that the bigger you are, the slower you are to run. Do you understand? The bigger you are, it is assumed that when you are big, you can't run. Am I making sense? It's assumed that when you are big, you can't run. So the slimmer you are, the more legba you are, the faster you are at what? Running. So the fastest shutter speed here will be the 1/1000. So which one will be the slowest here? That should have been the easiest for the whole world to give me a chorus. Very good. So it says the doubling or halving of time value, that's TV, represents one stop of an EV. What's an EV? Very good. So now it's telling you that the more you open your camera, how you open your camera for it to run, the speed, how you program your camera for it to open the curtains determines the amount of EV, exposure value, the amount of light you let in, which is very sensible. If we open this curtain small, what will happen? Small light will come in. If we open the whole curtain, the whole light will come in. Also bear in mind that, how many of you drive here? some cars, in the olden days where we have all the gears showing in the car, essentially I can help you with this. In the olden days, we had some cars that all the gears will be showing. You see that as it goes, it becomes thinner. The thinner ones and the faster ones. So that's just the same mechanism here. The more you go up, the thinner it is, the faster it is. Which makes more sense. Thinner people run faster than 5 people, right? Yeah. So it makes sense. Okay. And then per the amount that you open it, how thin it is or how wide it is, also determines the amount of light is let into your camera. Do you understand? Am I making sense? A shutter speed freezes the action of an image. From where? Or you just want me to explain? I said a shutter speed is how wide, how big or how small you ask, or how fast or how slow you ask your camera to move. The camera's opening curtain, grabbing curtain to move. Am I making sense? You can either open the whole curtain or you open just half the curtain. Cut out the curtain, 1/8 of the curtain, and it goes on. Now, at the same time too, the higher the numbers, it's measured in fractions. The higher the number, the faster, or the smaller, the higher the denominator. You know what denominator is? Numerator is? Okay. The denominator is a number at the bottom of a fraction. The higher the denominator, the faster your camera. Also bear in mind that means that it will open very small and it's very, very fast. So then you have to go and calculate the light that you let in as well, because it's going to go. That is the shutter speed, what you have asked it to do. Or it's going to be now, the next stage is what I'm very interested in to teach you, because we already have an example of AUS photo. It says, a fast shutter speed freezes action of an image. A slower shutter speed blurs the action of an image. So, remember Elinam's photo of the mother? Do you remember Elinam's photo of the mother? What happened in Elinam's photo?
The photo wasn't steady. Her hands didn't show.
The hands were at what?
It didn't show well. It was blurred.
It was running, yes. It wasn't blurred, it was running. Okay? Blur means the image is still solid, but it's not crystal clear. It's not sharp. In this case, the hand was not even a full hand. It was running. We couldn't see. It was just because of her full body, we could tell that that should be where a finger is. Okay? So, for her to be able to get the full finger, she has to increase her shutter speed so that it can freeze her mother saying, "Yay!" So meaning that most of these wildlife photos you see, where the animal is running, or better still, most of the sports photos, which is my film, most of the sports photos you see, where the person start. Is there a way, can you look for some photos for me, maybe online, from our site, something that will show as an example? The faster, when you see sportsmen, you see that, you know, we can't see with the human eye, but as a human being, when you are running, there's a flash of a second that we are airborne. Both our feet are off the ground. But it's so fast that you can't see it with your naked eye, unless you set your camera to a very high shutter speed, then you see it that this person at one time was airborne. All two legs were in the air. It happens so fast that you can only attain this with very high shutter speed. So that's why I asked you that if you're saying you didn't touch your camera to move your shutter speed to slow, then are you telling me your mother's hands were running even faster than Usain's legs? Do you understand? There are only two things that will cause an image to run. It's either that the speed was that much that you just couldn't capture, or that you set your shutter speed to catch it. You see? So as it's going, the thing is running. It's not steady. If it was a steady object, nothing will happen. But because it's a movement, and it's not going, it will stop at the last action it did. And so it's recording all the action. Hence, your mother's fingers became broad. You see, your mother's fingers took some time to settle to the finger itself. So that's the shutter speed. So, it's Sammy who can tell me what a shutter speed is. In fact, now we tell me what's a shutter speed.
The shutter speed is how fast or slow you lose the
Yes.
It's how fast or slow you set your camera to take your picture, to capture.
Do we all agree? I'm so happy with the fact that you've all remembered to say how fast or slow. Because mostly when we are talking about shutter, people's mind only go to speed. Or they go to fast. Okay. So here are two images. Oh, you feel it got? Okay. We'll pass this thing round and you will see that, because I was using, you will see that there's a young man. This is a Ghanaian photograph. This match was happening at Dansuma. I shot it at Dansuma. You would notice that both of the young man's legs are airborne. None of, have you seen it? Pass it on.
I want to look at
Or you are going to, okay.
this.
Is this one? No, pass it to you. Pass it. Because we are running out of time. Yes, you can. Have you seen it? That the young man is in the air. He was running. He wasn't jumping. But at no time with our naked eyes do we notice that when we are running, it happens to everybody. When you are running, at no time do you see it that you are airborne. Have you noticed that? Now, when you make the shutter speed slow, which Elinam has already taught us, have you noticed? Look at the difference. You see the other one, you can even see the soil that had uprooted, and you can see how airborne is. You see this one, you see everything is some sort of like running sort of. Can you see it? Okay. So it's up to you to decide which, yes. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. And it also depends on what work you are doing. Mostly people like to shoot waterfalls with slow shutter speed. This is an example of, look at the two, you see the first one is an example of a fast shutter speed, right? The next one, the shutter speed is very low. Do you see how it looks? It's flowing. It's giving it another dimension. It looks so serene. It looks so magical, mystical. Do you get it? So, it depends on your objective for shooting. Please, do you all understand? However, know that it also affects the amount of light. So you have to increase your light because the thing is moving very fast. Then the light must be so strong to pass through that fast relay. The curtain is moving this way. That's if you want to freeze the movement. The curtain is moving. Then there has to be a big source of light so that anytime I do this, a big amount of light comes in. But if you don't calculate it well, that's when you get those sort of grayish photos I showed you the other time. And that is called noise in photography. So you see some photos, what is all this around it? We are going to the aperture. It says the aperture is the size, and these are technicalities. There are no other ways to explain this. These are as I'm reading it. So these are things that you have to impose upon yourself and learn, because these are the principles of getting your camera to work out those magical photos you see out there in your globe. It says an aperture is the size of hole in the diaphragm. We said curtain. The curtain for the scene. Now to let in light, I'll show you the picture of a diaphragm. So yes, up there you see there's a hole that the light comes through. It's a round hole. However, this hole has like blades. Do you understand? It has like blades. Have you seen the drawing? Okay, so that's your diaphragm. So now let's go back to what the aperture is. It says aperture is the size of the hole in the diaphragm that allows light into the camera. Do you see the difference? The light comes through a hole. The speed is a curtain. This light, this hole that allows light has things like blades. It's a diaphragm. So it opens and closes. It's round. It can be opening and closing. Okay? Says the larger the hole, obviously, the more the what? Now I see you all following me. The larger the hole, exactly. So it says the more light that enters the camera to give at a given time. Because it's not going to be continuous. At any given time, depending on your shutter speed and then how wide or how small. It's not all about wideness. It can be also how small. Aperture is not about only bigness. It's how small or how big. Light is opened up for light to enter the camera. Okay. So aperture values are AV, which is self-explanatory. Or you want us to use your name? You want us to use your initials? It's AV, right? And measured using f-stop, known as, then there's so when you see photography, you see the F with that hash thing, or F, then you see slash and the number. Now here are the aperture opens. It says the image at the left shows, there it is. Here are the aperture opens. The first one is 1/4. Have you seen how wide it is? The next one is
Sure.
it's 1.4, not 1/4, 1.4. So it's measured in points. So the first one is 1.4. The next one is 2. And then the F has to come before. So whenever you see in photography, they're writing the data of the photo, right? And then you see the F. It starts for the aperture. Then we go to 2.8. These are not things that you create. These are numbers that are already there. You come in by selecting which one works for you at your given time. And that reminds me, people go like, oh, come and set your photographer, come and set my camera down for me so that whenever I want to shoot. It's a lie. You can't set a camera down for somebody so that whenever they want to shoot, they take it. Unless, of course, it's within a given time, because lighting varies. The setting I will give you to shoot in this room will be different. If you take that setting out, everything will be washed out. Because in this room, what happened. Somebody should explain to me why this room setting will be different from the outside setting. So I know you understand. Yes?
There's less light input and outside.
So
There will be less light entering when you go outside. The light will be too much.
you have answered, but you have not answered. What did you do to your camera? So tell me from the camera's perspective.
The aperture here is lower than needed when outside.
Okay. Anybody else who can say better? So I'm expecting them to say the opening for light on the camera, the opening you give to the light here, or the opening you are supposed to give here to the light will be wider. Because there's no light here. The light here is very low, it's very dim. So you have to open the camera more to allow in light. But when we go out, there is abundance of light. So we have to close. Just like when you go out, some of you use shades. Right? Some of you use shades. When you go out, when you step out, you always have to squint your eyes whenever you are coming out into the sun for the first time. The way you open your eyes in the room, that's a very typical example. The way you open your eyes in the room, it's not the same way you open your eyes in the sun outside, is it? Okay. So here are the numbers. So per whatever your light condition is, then you select the number that goes for you. It says smaller numbers represent wider apertures and larger numbers represent smaller apertures. Do you understand that? When we had 1.4, it was for a big aperture. Where we have 16 is for a small aperture. Do you understand? Do you understand? Yes. Okay. So it's just like what? What's the example I give?
The way your eyes are open in the room will be the same way.
Very good. So you open your eyes very wide when you're in a room. But when you go out into the sun, what do? Automatically it goes into. So always remember, do the same for your camera. When you are indoors, you opened the camera's eyes to collect in light and to see everything fili. When you go out, know that the camera too has a sensor. And so you need to close up the eyes a little. Right? Okay. Is our time up?